Hello and welcome to the Gaggle Global Challenge, and if necessary, destroy media narratives. I'm George Samuel. With me today, of course, is co-founder of the Gaggle, Peter Lavelle. So, Peter, we've now had the release of the Trump 28-point plan. We had the 20-point plan for Gaza. This is even a more detailed plan, and predictably, of course, there's outrage and spluttering among the Europeans since we didn't have any input in this.
I wonder why.
We need
I
input.
wonder why.
Um, the timing of it is also quite interesting because
Yep.
uh, the leading Europeans are all off to Johannesburg for the G20 summit. So they're not really around. They can't do what they did at the time of Anchorage, fly to Washington and berate Trump over the 28-point plan, because the United States is also boycotting the G20 summit because they have very poor relations with South Africa. So there's going to be no U.S. representation in South Africa. So that was very interesting that this plan has dropped just as all the Merzers and Macron Starmers are all off to Johannesburg. So one has to say the right away though that the plan is very detailed. I mean, this is a comprehensive plan. This isn't just simply, oh well, how do we stop this fighting in
Yeah, it's not Minsk 3 by another name.
no,
Okay.
exactly. It's detailed, and it seeks at least that to bring about a final kind of
Which finally, if I can just interject, this
mhm,
is what George and I have been saying
right,
from the very beginning. It's got to be a big picture. It's got to be a big tent. It has to be comprehensive. And
right.
from what I've seen of it, I'm not buying into it wholeheartedly, but it covers the parameters
It
that I
covers
would have
forever. So
expected.
let's go over this, Lee, because it's now been released. I think now in many media outlets, but it was the Axios was the first out of the gate to release it in full.
Again, Axios.
It's always Axios, exactly. And here is the Axios piece. It's always this guy Barak Ravid. It's amazing his knack of always being the right place at the right time. Um,
And to be fair to Axios, it's more accurate than most.
I agree. I agree. Yeah, so that's why when you say Axios says we have a scoop, okay, we have to take that seriously.
Yeah.
Anyway, here's the full plan. Number one, Ukraine's sovereignty will be confirmed. Okay. Two, a comprehensive non-aggression agreement will be concluded between Russia, Ukraine, and Europe. So it's a non-aggression agreement. All ambiguities of the last 30 years will be considered settled.
I wonder where they got that idea from. Oh, maybe in Anchorage. Okay.
That's right. Three, it is expected that Russia will not invade neighboring countries and NATO will not expand further. So that's an interesting.
Okay. My question on that
Mhm.
is is this NATO will not expand further at all or will not expand into Ukraine?
Well, that's a very good, very interesting point. Uh, when I read that, I read it as not expand further, as no further NATO expansion. But that no question, there's an ambiguity there. It could mean no further expansion into Ukraine. However, then it's a question, well, what do they mean by that? Because at least in public, hey, we're not a party to the conflict. Ukraine is not a member of NATO. We're just helping Ukraine out. Like good citizens. So that's an interesting. Like I guess what does that mean? NATO will not expand further. Nonetheless, it's very interesting that issue is raised in the plan.
Okay, and also before we go to the point four, non-aggression agreement will be concluded between Russia, Ukraine, and Europe. Well, we all know Europe was not in on this. Okay, so this is one could, I'm probably jumping ahead a little bit, but many are saying this is a fait accompli for Ukraine, but if that is so, it is also for Europe. So I'll just let that
Right. No,
dangle. Go
no,
to
no, yeah,
point two.
that's right. Yeah, you're right because there was no European
Well,
involvement.
thank goodness, or else we wouldn't be reading this.
That's right, no European involvement, and as I say, Starmer and the company, and we'll get to that because they were in a panic mode. Starmer, Merz, and Macron, and had to issue their
Again,
statement.
yeah, the last time they were in a panic was what, 15 minutes ago. Keep going.
Um, then four, a dialogue will be held between Russia and NATO, mediated by the United States, to resolve all security issues and create conditions for de escalation in order to ensure global security and increase opportunities for cooperation and future economic development. Now, this is something we have talked about repeatedly. I mean, this is the
Yeah.
kind of thing, a dialogue is about security. The way it's presented, NATO mediated by the United States. The United States runs NATO. So if you say
Yeah.
a dialogue between Russia and Europe mediated by the United States, then it's reasonable. I mean, Russia and Europe do border each other. But another way, and nonetheless, it say there are security issues
Yeah.
that bedevil Russian NATO relations. And so in other words, it's already they're not accepting the way the Kaya Kallas, Ursula von der Leyen was there. Oh, we're under threat. Russia's threatening us. It just says no. There are security issues between Russia and
What's
NATO.
interesting is that I'm sure this was your reaction too, is that it's on most of the points. Well, yeah, it's a half a loaf. Oh, okay, yeah. So again, I think the uninitiated would say a dialogue will be held between Russia and NATO, um, um, mediated by the United States. Well, it's kind of silly, but I'll play along. I'll
All
play
right,
along.
all right. Yeah, that's right. But therefore create conditions for de-escalation. So de-escalation, that's a mutual thing, and to ensure global security and increase opportunities for cooperation. Um, and then five, Ukraine will receive reliable security guarantees. And then it says a U.S. official told Axios, so this is in parentheses, a U.S. official told Axios this would be an explicit security guarantee for Ukraine from the U.S., the first time that has officially been on the table during the talks, though the proposal does not offer further details on what it entails. Then we come on later, there's a separate agreement on this security guarantee.
Okay, but what's interesting here, and I'm glad Axios pointed this out because these guys are pretty smart. A U.S. official told Axios this would be an explicit security guarantee for Ukraine from the U.S.,
Right.
not from NATO
That's right.
per
Exactly.
se.
That's right.
And
Exactly.
this is very important. You know why? Because this keeps the Russians on board.
Yes. Yeah, I agree. I absolutely agree. Um, and then did we miss? Oh, that was five. Yeah, good. All right. Six. The size of the Ukrainian armed forces will be limited to 600,000 personnel. There's been a lot of hysteria, in the Twitter sphere, or the Michael McFalls and others. Oh, wow, 600,000. That's actually that's a sizable army. 600,000. It's bigger than the army of the United Kingdom. So that's quite it's not that great a limit. And then, but in parentheses here it says, note, Ukraine army currently includes 885,000 personnel and included around 250,000 prior to the war, according to a Ukrainian official. So if they 600,000, there's also all the reserves. So when you add up the reserves to this army, that's quite a substantial armed force. Seven, Ukraine
Well,
agrees.
just one more comment. Um, for, this is also a recognition on the part of the Russians that a country of Ukraine's size and at least geographic importance has the right to protect itself. Okay, that's a very realistic. It's not maximalist
Right,
at all. Okay,
right,
there's total demilitarization. It's not. I mean,
okay,
if you look at what the Russians have been saying for 2 years now, it's actually very pragmatic, and
right.
now we see it in print.
That's right. That's right. Seven, Ukraine agrees to enshrine in its constitution that it will not join NATO, and NATO agrees to include in its statutes a provision that Ukraine will not be admitted in the future. That's an interesting one. Well, first of all,
Yep.
in the case of Ukraine, that's actually going back to status quo ante. That's what it was originally. Then that was changed, and then Yanukovych restored that into the Ukraine's constitution. Ukraine will be neutral, will not make any attempt to join NATO. So therefore, you go back to the Yanukovych era. But that's an interesting. NATO agrees to include in its statutes a provision that Ukraine will not be admitted in the future. Remember, NATO has been saying since 2008, every single NATO summit, Ukraine will be a member of NATO. Ukraine, the path to NATO membership is open. All the time they've been repeating it. So now they say NATO is going to have to include in its statutes the provision that Ukraine will not be admitted in the future.
Okay, everybody, there's 28 points here, and we're only on number 7. Now, this is um, this is crunch time
Yeah,
because Trump has a very, depending on the day of the week, ambiguous view of NATO. Now he's going to have to put his foot down and
yeah,
say, if you want NATO to continue to exist,
yeah.
or if you want the United States to be a member of this organization, you're going to have to change it. I don't want to hear your guff. I don't want to hear your protestations.
Right.
This must be done. Okay, let's go to point 8.
Okay. NATO agrees not to station troops in Ukraine.
Okay.
And then note, again, in parentheses, NATO countries, including France and the UK, have been working on separate proposals that would include small numbers of European troops on Ukrainian soil after the war. This plan appears to disregard that possibility.
Yeah, think.
NATO agrees not to station.
It appears to disregard.
Yes. Then it says European fighter jets will be stationed in Poland. All right, station them in
No, go
Poland.
ahead. Go knock yourself out. Yeah, go
Exactly.
ahead.
Then 10, the U.S. guarantee that the U.S. will receive compensation for the guarantee. So that's the security guarantee. We want
Okay,
compensation.
I don't think this came from the Russian side. I think this is very Trump side.
That's right. Yeah, yeah, exactly. Exactly. That's the Trumpian that. Yeah, we want compensation. That's right. But it's an interesting, Oh well, but of course it goes into detail how this compensation, who will indeed deliver this compensation. If Ukraine invades Russia, it will lose the guarantee. If Russia,
We would need an asterisk next to invades. I what that's very
well, that's
ambiguous
it's
for
left
me.
that's like, but that's an interesting question because of course if when we go into the other points, the Donbass, they'll say we're going to recognize essentially the Donbass as part of the Russian Federation. So any Ukrainian invasion of the Donbass, I would say it means Ukrainian invasion of Russia. I mean, if that's going to be the position,
That point was put there for a reason, everyone,
right?
because the entree is still to be served.
That's right. It will lose the guarantee if Russia invades Ukraine. In addition to a decisive, coordinated military response, all global sanctions will be reinstated. Recognition of the new territory and all other benefits of this deal will be revoked. If Ukraine launches a missile at Moscow or St. Petersburg without cause, the security guarantee will be deemed invalid. But
What about Rostov? What
that's
about
exactly absolutely that was exactly my thought. Why only Moscow and St. Petersburg? I mean, and it seems very odd to say Ukraine invades Russia, but why is if you launch a missile at Rostov or Voronezh or why would the security guarantee not be immediately deemed invalid? I mean, why just pick on those two cities?
whoever came up with this is just thinking, my intuition tells me that they think of Moscow and St. Petersburg as being large civilian populations. Okay, the focus is on
Right, right,
people.
right, right.
Okay,
Yep.
I don't know. I mean, we have no idea, everyone, how much knowledge whoever put this together. I hear that Jared Kushner was involved in it.
Kushner, yeah, well, yeah, exactly. I mean, Kushner was involved, and obviously.
Witkoff.
Witkoff. But they said there was some input from Qataris and from Turkey. So there was, there was some input from others. Because you have to wonder who in the administration involved in this. Because I don't think it was Sebastian Gorka or to be honest, Marco Rubio.
Or our good old friend Keith Kellogg.
Yeah, he's gone. He's on the
Oh,
way
he's
out.
gone Jan 1. Okay.
January. That's hey, it's already almost December, so that means it's
Yeah.
time to start packing your bags.
Yeah. Enjoy your grandkids. Okay.
That's right. Um, then 11, Ukraine is eligible for EU membership and will receive short-term preferential access to the European market while this issue is
This is
being considered.
this is just taking the Europeans and just smashing their head into the pavement. Now, EU, now you're going to do this. I mean, it shows the level of contempt that has
Yes,
been boiling over in this
yes,
administration for the Europeans.
yes.
I chuckled when I did, and they will get preferential access.
That's right.
Trump wants to get paid, but he doesn't care if the Europeans get
That's right.
paid. Okay.
Absolutely. It's a total contempt for the Europeans, and it's basically that the Europeans there's no invitation, there's no standing invitation to come to the White House and talk to Trump. There was a phone call, and we'll talk about that in a moment. There was a big phone call today between Merz, Macron, and Starmer, but there was no, it's not like, hey, we're going to put in a call later to Trump. No, there's apparently no one at the White House is taking their call.
No, that the switchboard isn't answering.
Um, and this is 12, a powerful, this is the Trumpian aspect, a powerful global package of measures to rebuild Ukraine, including, but not limited to, the creation of a Ukraine Development Fund to invest in fast-growing industries, including technology, data centers, and artificial intelligence. The United
Okay, well,
States,
the obvious question on this one is who's going to run the Ukrainian Development Fund, okay?
that's obviously,
And who's going to be overseeing it, considering the massive corruption that
but
is
I
only
think it's
beginning to be
The
reported.
Americans are going to do that, and the Americans are going to be running it. People. This is the people like who the Americans are going to appoint. They they they're going to be looking at the books. I mean, they're not just going to say, here's a checkbook. How much would you like? I mean, people like uh, the Scott Bessent. Obviously we don't like Scott Bessent at all, but they are good with money. They don't lose any money.
Yeah.
Any money they have, they keep.
Yeah, he's one of those guys that does this with a quarter. Like,
Yeah,
okay,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
there we go.
Exactly. They keep their money. They don't lose anything. The United States will cooperate with Ukraine to jointly rebuild, develop, modernize, and operate Ukraine's gas infrastructure, including pipelines and storage facilities. I love this, will cooperate with Ukraine to jointly. So at the moment that anything is joint, who's going to be
Yeah, it's one of
pocketing
those.
the revenue.
Yeah, it's one of those 51-49
Yeah,
things.
yeah,
You can have 49%, but that means you've got zip. Okay.
that's right.
And it's interesting here. It's interesting this pops up first.
Hmm.
Okay, okay, under the rubric of investment. The
Yes,
first thing they go to is the energy sector,
yes,
which of course the United States will cooperate with Ukraine to jointly rebuild, develop, et cetera, et cetera. No,
right,
the United States wants control over
right.
Ukraine's energy
Exactly,
sector.
exactly.
That's exactly what this is, a asset grab right
Right.
there, right in front of you.
It is, it's particularly striking given that they're talking, oh yeah, you're going to be joining the EU and everything. But the whole point of joining the EU is that now your energy infrastructure will be integrated with the EU infrastructure. And they say, no, I think we're going to be running your energy infrastructure. So
Don't be surprised that a Slovene and a Greek will be running your energy sector. Okay.
that's right.
Okay.
Joint efforts to rehabilitate war-affected areas for the restoration, reconstruction, and modernization of cities and residential
Okay.
areas.
Innocuous. Okay,
Yeah.
fine.
Infrastructure development, extraction of
Innocuous.
minerals. We're back
Ah,
in
here we go again. Here we go
minerals.
again.
Yeah, we the amount of time we
Remember
spent.
that agreement you signed? Now we expect you to honor it.
The World Bank will develop a special financing package to accelerate these efforts. And then we have Russia.
Okay, point 12 is all about expropriating Ukraine.
Yes,
Okay, fine.
that's right, exactly. Um, and then 13, Russia will be reintegrated into the global economy. The lifting of sanctions will be discussed and agreed upon in stages and on a case by case basis. The United States will enter into a long term economic cooperation agreement for mutual development in the areas of energy, natural resources, infrastructure, artificial intelligence, data centers, rare earth metals extraction
Oh yeah.
projects in the Arctic, and other mutually beneficial corporate opportunities. And then Russia will be invited to rejoin.
Well, I mean, these 2 points here. Now, a short preamble. As far as we know, the Russians were, what we understand is that these ideas that are coming out in this 28 point program seems to me distilled from what happened in Anchorage,
Yeah,
okay?
yeah.
Because I don't think there was any real active Russian involvement in this plan per se.
Well,
Somebody,
I think Dmitriev was involved in this. I
yeah,
mean, obviously,
good
Kirill
good
Dmitriev
point, good
and
point. I think
Switkov have been discussing this now for some
I
time.
think
Yeah.
I think that had to do with maybe with sanctions. We have to remember everyone.
Well,
The
this
Russian.
guy, this sounds like Dmitriev. I mean, this
Yeah,
is
that's what I'm saying is that this was his cutout for sanctions, economic development, because that's his bailiwick. That's
right,
what and he's good at it
right,
apparently too.
right. Yeah.
Okay,
But
so but the last point here, Russia will be invited to rejoin G8. I hope Russia does not do that.
but that's Trumpian. Trump has been talking about this G8 thing for some time. I mean, I can't remember when.
I think the G7 is so discredited
It's
right
so
now.
discredited, but I mean, I don't think I'm not even sure Trump cares very much about the G7, but he
No,
has
he
brought
doesn't.
this up before that I don't think Russia should have been kicked out of the G8.
Yeah,
So
but it shows everything about you know, Trump's brain is wired for status, and
right.
so he thinks this is a carrot that will inflate the ego of the Russians, particularly Vladimir Putin. I think it's a red herring. I mean,
Yeah,
I don't.
I don't think Russians care for it. Um, but this all of this is as we're reading this, you think, all right, well, what about the other six members of the G7? What are
Here
they
we
going to
go
say
again.
about
Here
this?
we go again. Yeah, that's right. You're gonna eat your gruel and enjoy it.
That's right. And then 14, frozen funds will be used as follows. $100 billion in frozen Russian assets will be invested in US-led efforts to rebuild and invest in Ukraine. Now, it's not clear to me which 100 billion are they talking about. Do they mean the ones what's in euro clear, or do they
That's
mean
my sense.
frozen assets? Because the United States has also frozen Russian assets. So there's money that's frozen in the United States. There's money frozen in the UK. There's a lot of places that the Russian assets have been frozen. So I just wondered what frozen assets are they talking about here?
Well,
Um,
and also, I may be getting ahead of our skis here, but the Ukrainians are not going to recognize the inclusion of the Donbass
no,
into.
but
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 see, but that's where the trick is. The Russians will say,
but the United States, it says it will be invested in U.S.-led efforts to rebuild and invest in Ukraine. In other words, it's not going to be up to Ukraine. Ukraine isn't going to be deciding where this money will be spent, or at least according to the plan. I mean, the
"Wow,
practicalities
this
are
is
different, but
this."
according to the plan, this will be U.S.-led. The United States will decide where the
Yeah,
money goes.
yeah, nation building, nation building.
But at least they're saying we're not just going to.
Why does the U.S. want to take this on its plate? This is a massive job,
It's a massive.
massive, massive endeavor.
It is it is yeah, no, there's no question. And then the US will receive 50% of the profits from this venture. Well, that's nice. Um, Europe will add $100 billion to
Telling the Europeans what to do again. I love this.
increase the amount of investment available for Ukraine's reconstruction.
I love this.
Frozen European funds will be unfrozen. The remainder of the frozen Russian funds will be invested in a separate US-Russian investment vehicle that will implement joint projects in specific areas. This fund will be aimed at strengthening relations and increasing common interests to create a strong incentive not to return to conflict. They, you have to.
I don't think any of this has legs, George. I'm sorry.
I do have my doubts, but that's an interesting. But it does raise the issue of what the. We know the Europeans are furious. We know Zelensky doesn't like this, but so far the Russian response has been muted.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
we'll talk to that in a minute, but
yeah, yeah.
I've been looking at TASS all day today, and all we're getting is just very innocuous
Yeah.
statements
Well,
from
I think
Peskov.
but that's our reaction too. I mean, we're on point 14. I haven't said stop, George. I've had enough. Okay, okay. I'm game. I'll listen. Keep going.
No,
Okay.
I think so, and I think the Russian uh, position now is, well, let them respond. Why should we rush out with a response? Let them. I mean, if the Europeans just go crazy and say, well, we want nothing to do with this. This is horrific and nightmare. Then the Russians say, well, we didn't reject it. You rejected it out of hand. On the other hand, if the Russians were to rush out now and say, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely,
yeah, 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 yeah,
endorse
yeah. We'll
this,
take it. Yeah, yeah,
then
exactly.
that's going to undermine the whole plan. So,
Exactly.
um, and then he says a joint American-Russian working group on security issues will be established to promote and ensure compliance with all provisions of this agreement. Again, American and Russian, so
Exactly, George. I mean, one gets the impression is that this is just a huge middle finger to the
right.
Europeans,
It is.
okay?
It is.
Because Ukraine in this peace proposal has no agency,
No, none,
obviously, but
none.
the Europeans have none either.
That's right. That's what's remarkable, and that's why Kaya Kallas
Yeah.
and the rest of them, and Tusk and Sikorsky, they're just beside themselves. How dare you do all this above our heads? We matter. We're the ones who are important here. Russia will enshrine in law its policy of non-aggression towards Europe and Ukraine. So,
Okay, but again, George and I are real sticklers about this here, and it's something that I sent a comment to you last night. One of our one of our friends that writes about Ukraine all the time, and he says, to stop further Russian aggression. Well, I mean, Russia didn't move a military alliance towards Europe.
yeah.
Europe moved towards Russia. So I would, Russia will enshrine. How about all parties will enshrine a
But
policy of
that's what it seemed
non-aggression
like. I
to
mean,
others?
one of the early points it seemed like you're absolutely right. When you say a non-aggression agreement, that means all parties declare that they hold no aggressive intent against anyone else. That's what a non-aggression agreement is. That
Exactly.
both sides say non-aggression. We're not going to start any war against the other. So therefore, I mean, this is kind of almost a redundancy because they had that earlier about these mutual agreements between Russia, Ukraine, and Europe. But I guess I say enshrine in law so that you actually pass a law saying, we promise we will not do anything aggressive against anyone. Then 17, the United States. This is very strange, why they included this in the deal. The United States and Russia will agree to extend the validity of treaties on the non-proliferation and control of nuclear weapons, including the START 1 treaty. And then in parentheses here, the New START, the last major use of the US-Russia arms control treaty, is due to expire in February. I don't know why they put START 1. I guess maybe they mean New START, but the
New
START 1
start.
is
Yes.
something that's going
That's
back.
why I wonder who wrote this. Okay,
Yeah.
there are micro mistakes.
Right,
Okay,
right,
and
right.
and 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 That's really bad form, George.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
really,
yeah.
really bad
Yeah,
form.
that's
But having said that, is this a tip off that this agreement is or proposed agreement is time sensitive?
yep, that's right. Well, that seems to be. I mean, that's what we'll look at that in a minute. The media speculation is that Trump is now really pushing for this. That hey, you've got to agree. There isn't going to be. You're not going to have the leisure of spending the next 6 months debating this. You need to agree to this now. Ukraine agrees to be a non-nuclear state in accordance with the Treaty on Non-Proliferation of Nuclear
Okay,
Weapons.
okay, okay.
Um,
Status quo ante again.
that's right.
Right.
The Zaporozhye nuclear power plant will be launched under the supervision of the IAEA, and the electricity produced will be distributed equally between Russia and Ukraine.
I don't think the Russians will have really any
Yeah,
objections to that.
yeah. Um, and then both countries undertake to implement educational programs. This is similar to what they had in the Gaza, the 20-point Gaza program. Educational programs in schools and society aimed at promoting and understanding the tolerance of different cultures and eliminating racism and prejudice. Ukraine will adopt EU rules on religious tolerance and the protection of linguistic minorities. That's a
Yeah,
that's a big that's a big one.
that's Anchorage. That's Anchorage.
Right, but for them to talk about, well, you have to adopt EU rules on religious tolerance and the protection of linguistic minorities. That's a big thing for this to bring that in the plan, because
Yeah,
that's
well,
something the Russians have
but
been saying over and over again.
yeah, but in a way, it's kind of redundant because formally, in a formalistic way, if Ukraine wants to join the EU, they already have rules on that.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, I think yes, but the EU ignores the rules when it came
Yeah.
to Ukraine. Yeah.
Again, this is just, sticking needles in their
Right.
butt.
And the
Okay.
point is that basically the Ukraine has been practicing religious
Flagrantly.
intolerance. There's been a persecution of minorities, and the EU has looked the other way. And so, despite the fact the Russians keep bringing up the status of the Russian Orthodox Church in in Ukraine, the EU says, well, it's just an agency of the Kremlin. They don't deserve any protection. So here they say, no, 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 you have
Also,
got to
this
protect the Russian Orthodox Church.
is also kind of a recognition that Ukraine, you've got a Nazi problem.
That comes up in a bit as well, that
Yeah.
issue. Yeah. Both countries will agree to abolish all discriminatory measures and guarantee the rights of Ukrainian and Russian media and education. Again,
Oh, remember the Biden administration just attaboy, shut down all those opposition and
that's
Russian language
that's
media
right.
outlets. Remember
Exactly.
that? They were cheering it on.
All Nazi ideology and activities must be rejected and prohibited. So no more extolling of the virtues of Stepan Bandera. No more statues erected for Bandera. Um, so territories. This is 21. Crimea, Lugansk, and Donetsk will be recognized as de facto Russian, including by the United States. Kherson and Zaporozhye will be frozen along the line of contact, which will mean de facto recognition along the line of contact.
Which of George and I have said that that would be a very possible
Yep,
concession on the Russian side.
that's right.
And
That's right.
okay, so
Because if other things are taken into consideration, this plan does make an attempt to take other things into consideration, security issues, because that's what the Russians have been talking about, security issues, and this plan does address those, and the issue of Russians in Ukraine, the issue of the Nazis, the issue of the religion and linguistic minorities, the issue of Russian media. So long as you start addressing those, which the Russians keep saying those are the root causes of the problem, then yeah, you can make these territorial concessions. Um, Russia will relinquish other agreed territories it controls outside the five regions. So that refers to, I think, territory around Dnipropetrovsk and Kharkov. Ukrainian forces will withdraw from the part of the Donetsk Oblast that they currently control, and this withdrawal zone will be considered a neutral, demilitarized buffer zone, internationally recognized as a territory belonging to the Russian Federation. So it would still be recognized as belonging to the Russian Federation, but it would be demilitarized. Russian forces will not enter this demilitarized zone. And then after agreeing on future territorial arrangements, both the Russian Federation and Ukraine undertake not to change these arrangements by force. Any security guarantees will not apply in the event of a breach of this commitment. Russia will not prevent Ukraine from using the Dnieper River for commercial activities, and agreements will be reached on the free transport of grain across the Black Sea. Um,
Some of Trump's donors probably pointed that out to him. Okay, we need to get that grain to market. Okay, we've totally obliterated any kind of Ukrainian ownership of agriculture. We own it right now, and we got to get to market.
We got to get it in market. You know. A humanitarian committee will be established to resolve outstanding issues. Prisoners and bodies will be exchanged on all bases. All civilian detainees and hostages will be returned. Family reunification program will be implemented. And notice there's no mention. Oh, the kidnapped, all those
Yeah,
kidnapped
the children.
Yeah,
George, what about the children?
kidnapped babies.
I see Qatari fingerprints all over this. Do you?
Yeah, I do as well. Yeah. Because there's this resemblance to the Gaza plan. Measures will be taken to alleviate the suffering of the victims of the conflict. And then Ukraine will hold elections in 100 days. So I assume 100 days after the signing of an agreement. They don't mean 100 days from now. So
from signing, yeah.
All parties involved in this conflict will receive full amnesty for their actions during the war and agree not to make any claims or consider any complaints in the future. So much.
All party. Who's all?
Well, that's a very good question. All parties.
Because the Europeans want to have some kind of tribunal.
Exactly. That's what that means. No tribunals. Yeah. ICC, forget ICC, and all these tribunals for war crimes, tribunals for waging an aggressive war. Nothing like that. That's basically, we're going to put a line in the sand under this. So that's, again, the Europeans are going to be very displeased. All the energy that they expended on setting up these tribunals.
Well, I mean, George, some people is going to make a career and retire on that job. Okay.
That's right.
You know how long these tribunals last?
Yeah, exactly. And lawyers were drooling with enthusiasm. How they're going to be making oodles of money, like all the lawyers who are at the ICC. I mean, that is such a gig.
Oh, and being headquartered in Barcelona and a five-star hotel. Oh, and this could be
exactly.
It could be a 10-year truck.
Exactly. And then you go home over the weekend. So you always fly home, that's very nice, business class flight home, and then business class on Monday, when you go back to work. So the agreement will be legally binding. Its implementation will be monitored and guaranteed by the Peace Council, headed by
President. Can't you get a little bit more original?
Headed by President Trump. Sanctions will be imposed for violations. And then the final point, 28, once all parties agree to this memorandum, the ceasefire will take effect immediately after both sides retreat to agreed points to begin implementation of the agreement. So you agree to the memorandum, then you get the ceasefire. So finally, you're getting some sense. No, we're not going to get a ceasefire, just like that. And then we're going to start talking basically completely pointless. And no, you have to agree to the memorandum. Then you get that, which is the normal way.
That was the gaggle peace plan.
That's right.
That's right. Well, George, what can we say? We made it to point 28.
We got it to 20.20.
And I'm still here.
That's right. We got to 28. you've got it's a serious plan, and it's a plan that does address the issues. This is the first plan that we've seen that addresses the real issues of this war. Not all this nonsense of put a ceasefire in place, or even a revival of Minsk, or a Minsk agreement, or anything like that. This isn't this isn't Minsk. I mean, this is saying, hey, we have to address much bigger issues before we can get a peace deal.
What's important also, this isn't Istanbul.
This isn't Istanbul. No, no.
And this, again, this is early hours. It dropped yesterday evening. This is early hours. The Russians have not directly commented on it.
Right.
Obviously, want to
We'll,
watch
we'll talk about
when
what
the
so far
internal
we've had the
development.
response.
But this is a real meaningful departure from that process.
Right. Right. Exactly. This is serious. Now, after this was posted, then Axios, then Marco Rubio, yeah, he sent out this
I
fairly,
saw that.
fairly anodyne tweet. Ending a complex and deadly war such as the one in Ukraine requires an extensive exchange of serious and realistic ideas, and achieving a durable peace will require both sides to agree to difficult but necessary concessions. This is why we are and will continue to develop a list of potential ideas for ending this war based on input from both sides of the conflict. This has almost nothing to do with what we just read. I mean, this is kind of a basically nothing. I mean, it's just saying it.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah, yeah.
it doesn't
Yeah,
sound like
Marco Marco Rubio, he's just shooting the breeze here.
right. It doesn't sound like he had any input on the
It looked like
28
he's
point plan.
embracing it.
Exactly, exactly.
Where's the
Because
Marco Rubio fingerprints? I don't see any.
no, I don't see any. And if it had been, if he had been involved in drafting those 28 points, he would have given a much more of an endorsement of that. Hey, this is a framework that has the potential for resolving this war once and for all. A serious peace agreement that addresses root causes, peace in our time, security for all in Europe, something like that. If he was involved in this, but say, well, it's a list of potential ideas. Well, what's the use of a list of potential ideas? Anyone can put forward potential ideas for ending the war based on input from both sides of the conflicts. Nothing. I mean, that's just simply a
So the
nothing
question is,
statement.
are you on board, Marco? Because
I,
I can't tell.
yeah, exactly. We don't know
No.
whether it's on board. I think we can tell that he wasn't involved in the drafting of this plan. And then we have the scoop, yet another scoop from Axios, and this came out just after they posted the 28 point. Trump's peace plan for Ukraine includes NATO-style security guarantee. And then they say here, President Trump's peace plan for Ukraine includes a security guarantee modeled on Article 5, which would commit the US and European allies to treat an attack on Ukraine as an attack on the entire transatlantic
Now
community.
they're pouring cold water on the whole thing
They
right
are,
now.
they are, because that's not quite what the
No, no,
28
no, no,
points say.
no, 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 no.
That's
That's not what you said.
that's not exactly.
Don't change the rules in the middle of the
That's right.
conversation.
That's right. That's right. So according to a draft obtained by Axios, and so anyway, then he goes on. So then says the
Well, this is like a Maloney idea.
yes, that's right. But yes, that's exactly what Malone. That was a Maloney idea. But here's then this is here then it says this is the security will be for yeah. Let's go back a little bit. Yeah. So here it says it states that any future significant, deliberate, and sustained armed attack by Russia on Ukraine shall be regarded as an attack threatening the peace and security of the transatlantic community, and the U.S. and its allies will respond accordingly. So that's access. And so now let's actually see the what it says, this framework, the draft text. This framework establishes the conditions for an armistice between Ukraine and the Russian Federation.
Armistice. I thought this was a peace agreement.
That's right, exactly. An
They're
armistice.
two
You're
different
absolutely right.
things.
Armistice is not that's no
Those
peace
are two
agreement.
different things.
You're
Yep.
absolutely right. Yeah, absolutely. For an armistice between Ukraine and the Russian Federation, and provides a security assurance modeled on the principles of Article 5 of the North Atlantic Treaty. But this draft, this is not the 28-point plan. This was a draft agreement that they say they gave to Zelensky just to sweeten the pot. But that's not the 28-point plan. I mean, so this is just a draft agreement. If you could say, well, you just gave this to Zelensky, well, that's not part of the plan. You can't just simply say, well, this is the plan. Oh, and we've got a side agreement with
Yeah, well,
Zelensky
that's
that
like
undermines the plan.
you know, remember the great Cold War summits, George, where
Yeah,
Brezhnev and Nixon would be sitting next to each other and they would sign and they would pass the books
that's
back,
right.
you know,
That's
very
right.
form, everyone, it's a very ominous moment. Zelensky was just given a few words on a napkin,
Right.
a paper
Right.
napkin,
That's
not
right.
even a cloth napkin,
Yep.
okay? But this is not going to go down well in Moscow.
No,
No.
absolutely not. Absolutely not. And then he says, one, the United States affirms that a significant, deliberate, and sustained armed attack by the Russian Federation across the agreed armistice line into Ukrainian territory shall be regarded as an attack threatening the peace and security of the transatlantic community. In such an event, the President of the United States shall, in exercise of constitutional authority and after immediate consultation with Ukraine, NATO, and the European partners, determine the measures necessary to restore security. But notice is the President of the United States makes that decision. It's not the NATO, not NATO. The President, in exercise of constitutional authority and after consultations with Ukraine, NATO, and European partners, determine the measures necessary to restore security. These measures may include armed force, intelligence, and logistical assistance, economic and diplomatic actions, and other steps judged appropriate. That's not much of anything, to be honest. I mean, that's just, well, it may, that may include armed force, may include anything, may include economic and diplomatic actions. But either way, it's the decision is still that of the President of the United States. It's not says, which is unlike the North Atlantic Treaty, which says, hey, well, that it'll be a NATO decision, and all for one and one for all. It's not. That's not what he's saying. The president shall determine. The president alone will determine what to do next. Determine the measures necessary to restore security.
It's too ambiguous for
Oh, I,
me.
I agree. It's ambiguous, but nonetheless, it's not. It isn't exactly the way Axios put it. It's like a NATO Article 5, because that's not what NATO Article 5 says. There it says, oh, it's a NATO decision. Here it says it's a United States decision after consultation. NATO members, including France, the UK, Germany, Poland, and Finland, affirm that Ukraine's security is integral to European stability and commit to act in concert with the United States in responding to any qualifying violation, ensuring a unified and credible deterrent posture. But it's the United States that's going to make that decision. It's still in concert with the United States. So you don't go and make your decisions your own. You have to wait for the decision coming from the United States.
Very curious that they say NATO members, comma, and then they list France, the United Kingdom, Germany,
Yeah, yeah.
Poland, Ukraine. Well, it's interesting because this is very deceptive, or the writer, whoever came up with this, doesn't understand the kind of ambiguity that it creates because it looks like France, the UK, Germany, Poland, and Finland are making sovereign decisions. They
Correct.
happen to be part of
Right,
NATO,
right,
but
right,
they're making sovereign decisions
right.
beyond NATO, beside NATO,
No, it
adjacent to
says
NATO. Is it, that that's it?
they well the way it says they commit to act in concert with the United States. So in other words, they have to wait for the United States to make a decision, to make a determination whether this is an act of aggression or not. They can't make any decision on their own. They have to wait for the United States to make a decision. But it's very odd. Why just France, UK, Germany, Poland, and Finland? What about everyone else?
What about the Baltic
Yeah,
Chihuahuas?
yeah. I mean, Estonia. Hey, we got to be in this. We're the most important member of NATO. This framework enters into force upon signature and shall remain valid for 10 years, renewable by mutual agreement. A joint monitoring commission led by European partners with US participation will oversee compliance.
I know this may be a bit redundant at this point here, but this sounds like a treaty. Doesn't the Senate have to ratify this?
That is a very interesting question, and if the United States makes a commitment to for Ukraine, which is what basically it's in the 28-point plan. The United States is making a commitment to Ukraine. I would have thought the Senate would have to ratify.
Well, also here, I mean, this is the cynicism of all of this here. It will be the president of the United States that will make the determination. So what they're saying is that Ukraine, you can complain all you want, but we're going to make the decision. We're not
Right.
going to
No, right.
we're not going to find ourselves booby trapped by you.
But this is
Okay.
also a very interesting question because I mean you have all this bluster that comes from in Washington, particularly from the Senate. You know, they're even more hawkish than anyone else. Would the Senate really ratify this agreement? I'm not sure that they would, they say, yeah, yeah, that's it. You know, we'll have this open-ended commitment to Ukraine. You know, I mean, they like to bluster and oh, we're going to do this and this, but actually say, okay, well, vote to ratify this agreement. I don't know that the Senate would vote to ratify this.
What it will end up being, I mean, in an imaginary scenario here, like so many other commitments that U.S. presidents make, they make a commitment to it, but it's never ratified. And I think that
That's right. Yeah, like the JCPOA.
exactly.
And so the signed Ukraine, Russian Federation, United States, European Union, and NATO. So that's so thank God Ursula von der Leyen will get to
Have her say,
I
yeah.
exactly. She's already very unhappy, but she's also off to Johannesburg. So, so everybody's on in Johannesburg with the exception of the United States. But anyway, let's just take a look quickly at the reactions to this agreement. This um, and so today there was, as we were saying earlier, there was the phone call involving Merz, Macron, and Starmer, and this was the kind of the readout from the phone call. So we have Chancellor Merz speaks by phone with Macron, Starmer, and Zelensky. Zelensky was in on the call. And German Chancellor Merz, Macron, Starmer spoke by telephone today with Zelensky. I like the way Meloni always gets shafted. You know, Italy's quite a big country, big
Well,
important country.
it's easy to overlook small blonde women. It happens.
They reaffirmed their unwavering and full support for Ukraine on the path to a lasting and just peace.
All right, let's get to the meat. I hate this verbiage from
I
these
know,
people.
it's always like that.
It just drives me nuts. I
I
mean,
know, I know.
when it comes to this stuff, I always make sure I have today's crossword puzzle.
That's
Okay,
right. That's
because
right. Yeah. No, yeah. But this is all. They always have this diplomat.
pity on you, George, to have to actualize it for us.
Anyway, the four leaders welcome the United States' efforts to.
No, they didn't. No,
No,
they
they
don't.
exactly.
No, they don't.
It's always very funny. They say, "Well, we're very, very grateful to President Trump for, yeah, we're very happy that President Trump has taken such an active."
Can you imagine their advisors? You know, say, do I really have to say yes, sir? You
Yes,
have
you
to.
have to absolutely.
This is
You
the
have
way it works. Okay,
It's the
we have
way it
no
works,
choice.
and particularly with Trump, who's going to be very, very sensitive to anyone who isn't very respectful towards him.
Yeah,
So
he
they,
might call you. He might call you piggy. Don't be careful. Well,
yeah,
I just love it. The poor leaders welcome.
we welcomed the efforts to end the war in Ukraine. In particular, they welcomed the commitment to Ukraine's sovereignty. That's point one. That was number one. There were 27 other points. Welcomed Ukraine sovereignty and
Yeah,
the
well,
willingness.
Russia has never questioned the sovereignty of
No,
Ukraine.
no one has ever
Okay,
done that. Yeah.
never done that. Not once.
No, and the willingness to provide Ukraine with robust security
Here we
guarantees.
go, robust.
I love the way they sort of pick this. So they like the bit. it's not a la carte. I mean, that's the whole point of when you put forward a plan is that you have to take the plan. You can't just say, well, I'll take this and I'll take that. Well, then that isn't a plan. Of course, you'll
No,
take that, the bits that you
you have
like.
you have to eat your vegetables before you get dessert. Sorry.
Exactly, exactly. All of it. Exactly. Yeah, everything that's on the menu, you have to eat. They agreed to coordinate closely with each other and with other European partners and with Washington on this matter.
Of course they
And
did.
then they pledged to continue pursuing the goal of safeguarding vital European and Ukrainian interests in the long term.
No. There's no continue pursuing.
That's right.
There's no continue pursuing.
That's right.
This
Um,
is an agreement.
that's right.
So you don't have to continue to pursue here.
That's right. Exactly. And then they put this in. This includes, among other things, ensuring that the line of contact serves as the starting point for any understanding and that the Ukrainian armed forces remain capable of effectively defending Ukraine's
Okay, here
sovereignty.
we
So,
go.
so
What
you
does this mean? This is ceasefire.
exactly. It's a ceasefire.
Yeah, we love the agreement. All 28 points. Ceasefire. It means a
Sorry,
ceasefire.
immediate ceasefire, line of contact. It's precisely that isn't the 28-point plan. They agreed that any agreement affecting European states, the European Union, or NATO requires the approval of European partners or a consensus among the allies.
Well,
Well,
you can
you can
agree
agree
all you
anything you
want.
like.
You can agree all you want on that, but it's not a la carte, everyone, just as George said.
That's right. And then Zelensky said, well, I held a joint call with President Macron, Prime Minister UK, and Bundeskanzler Friedrich Merz. I'm grateful for their principled support for Ukraine and for all our people. We discussed the plan for peace in Ukraine and all of Europe. We value the efforts of the United States, President Trump and his team aimed at ending the war. We are working on the document prepared by the American side. This must be a plan that ensures a real and dignified
What do
peace.
you mean we are working
Well,
on? Who's
exactly,
we?
you can't really work. I mean, they presented this as the plan. That's the plan. I mean, you know, if you say, well, I don't like this and this and this, which is what basically Starmer and Merz are saying. Well, we just, we like point two and point four or whatever. Then that's not the plan.
Okay, we discussed the plan for peace for Ukraine and all of Europe. No, this is a plan to end the conflict in Ukraine.
That's right.
Full stop.
That's right. We are coordinating closely to make sure that the principled stances are taken into account. And so that's
Okay, and to ensure they are taken into account, you have what leverage?
they get no leverage. And then we have the Russian response, as I say, almost no response. So we had one, Russia fully open to peace talks on Ukraine. And then this is Peskov. And then it says Peskov emphasized that Russia is ready to continue talks based on the understandings made at the summit in Anchorage. He declined to comment on media reports asserting that Vladimir Zelensky would sign US President Donald Trump's peace plan by November the 27th, which is next Thursday. There's some stories that there's a demand that they sign by next Thursday. And we don't know what media outlets are basing their such reports on. Therefore, there is nothing to share here, he said. And then there's another story from TASS. Russia has not officially received anything from the US regarding new peace plan. And then Russia is aware of possible modifications to the US peace plan. So Russia is still officially they are sticking to the line. Oh, well, Anchorage. We had these agreements in Anchorage. That's the agreement. So we don't really know what's really in this plan. We are aware of possible modifications and approved wording of the U.S. peace plan. They're still talking about Anchorage, but we
Right.
have not officially received anything.
Well, let me tell you, everyone, from lived experience, the 28 points that George and I went with, if and when it is presented officially to the Russian diplomats will go through this thing with a fine-tooth comb, and they'll come up with even more questions than George and I have
Right,
in this podcast.
right,
You know why? Because that's the way they are.
right,
Every single word is weighted.
right.
It's taken very, very
It's
seriously.
taken very.
I'm sure it'll be printed out and they'll just say, well, what does this word mean? Why is it here? Okay, they will do that. I
But I'm
guarantee.
sure that sometime, maybe in the next 48, 72 hours, I think Putin will make a response. He will make some, whatever, at some event, he will be asked and he will make a response. But the response will be fairly like, yeah, I'm interested, but there's some things that need to be ironed out or something along those lines. But I think he will make some kind of a response. I mean, so far this is just very anodyne. And then here's another task. Kremlin will not hold Ukraine talks in a megaphone mode. And then the Kremlin does not intend to hold talks in Ukraine in the megaphone mode. We are open to peace talks for the sake of successful peace talks, not for the sake of processes. We truly want these peace talks to be successful. We are not prepared to discuss this in a megaphone mode. So that's as I say, nothing much from the Russians. And here's the Financial Times headline: Europe races to respond to U.S. Russia and Ukraine peace talks. And then says European capitals are rushing to coordinate a response to U.S. Russian peace plan to end the war, which officials have warned would mean Kiev's capitulation.
Who wants to hear their response? You're not asked.
No one's a response. There's no
No one's
response.
asked you your opinion because you made it that you made that the case. You forfeited any reasonable right to
Right.
respond. You have forfeited it in the
That's right.
extreme.
Well, this is it. You see, I mean, Trump knows what the European game is. He knows the European game is just to continue with this war. That's the European plan. The plan is we'll just continue this war, get our hands on this money, this 140 billion euros. That could give us another 2, 3 years. And in the end, by then Trump will be gone. They are making a calculation. The Europeans are making a calculation. There's 1 year to the midterms. As things stand, the Democrats are likely to win the midterms, and then Trump is in a lot of trouble. He'll be impeached, he'll be distracted, he's going to have to fight off impeachment, one impeachment after another, and probably Trump will calculate that in order to keep the Democrats at least happy, he's going to play the Democrats' game on Ukraine. I think that's what the European, they're not
Well,
stupid.
and
They're
also,
making a political calculation. Trump's got 1 year. Let's just wait him out.
and well, and this is for a different podcast, and I don't want to go through all the things that are weighing on Trump's tenure in office. However, a peace in Ukraine, that's going to keep MAGA interested.
That's
See,
yes.
he kept his word. He needs this.
He needs this.
He-
That's Trump's incentive, but he also knows what the European game is. He knows the Europeans hate him. He knows these Europeans, they're aligned with the Democratic Party. They're quite open about it. They support the Democrats. They don't like him. They want
Look,
the
everybody,
Democrats to
just
return to power.
to reinforce George's point, remember the preschool setting in the White House? The,
Right.
the entire European leadership met with the Democratic Party leaders.
Exactly, exactly. So they want them back, and so they're calculating that. Well, we only have 1 year. If he loses the midterms, he's underwater in the polls. Like 1 year, he's going to be totally preoccupied with fighting off impeachments, and those are going to be nasty impeachments. So he's going to be distracted, and then he's going to play the Democrats' game, and that's all they have to do. They have to just simply survive for 1 year. Trump knows this, and that's why he's not playing their game, and he's just putting forward this plan without input from Europe.
And basically, we don't know what the Russian official response is going to be, but we do know that Trump's calculation is, I don't want from the Europeans, I don't want your input. This is it. Okay, that's it.
That's right. That's right.
No more classroom
Yeah,
meetings
that's right.
in
Exactly.
Vermont.
Exactly. And then this plan and the scale of U.S. pressure on Ukraine has blindsided European leaders and their national security teams. They were blindsided,
No, they're not.
who on Friday were rushing to devise a coherent response to Washington. And
Well, I mean, what do you mean rushing to devise a co? So you've been incoherent. I mean, that begs so many questions. So what have you been doing?
what do you
Oh, we've
mean?
been promoting war.
That's
That's why. Yeah.
that's exactly what they've been doing. They've been having these meetings about, how do we get our hands on this 140 billion euros, and then they were having meetings on this 20th sanctions package. kind of said, yeah, we are working on the 20th sanctions package on Russia. That's what they've been doing. And, oh, we were blindsided. We didn't realize this was happening, even though we knew that Dmitriev came to the United States to meet Witkoff. You should have been watching that. That's quite a big thing that he came to the country and then went off to meet Witkoff. Um, and then says the European rearguard effort to slow or block the US-Russia proposal has been complicated by the leaders of France, Germany, and Italy, UK traveling to South Africa for the G20 summit this weekend. Kind of complicated things. Um, and particularly as Trump isn't going to be there, he made a special point that he's not going to South Africa. Officials said plans were underway for a crisis meeting on Saturday of European leaders present in Johannesburg for the gathering. Yeah, but what's the point? You can have a crisis meeting all you like.
Another wrecked weekend. Poor guys.
Ursula von der Leyen, European Commission president, said on Friday that she would, quote, discuss the situation both with European leaders and with other leaders here at the sidelines of the G20. But
Why
not
is
with.
she going to?
It's just the whole thing is outrageous. I mean, she gets to all these things. This is a totally unelected person. Nothing about Ukraine without Ukraine, von der Leyen said,
Wow,
repeating
that's
the
original, really.
EU's long-standing position on peace negotiations. And then the panic among European capitals resembled previous episodes earlier in this year, in which the Trump administration made proposals to Ukraine without consulting or notifying European partners. And then this guy from the Eurasia Group, this says the Europeans had become incredibly complacent in their dealings with the Trump administration. This latest plan is a timely reminder that there are very powerful forces within the administration that continue to prioritize Russia over transatlantic relations. Well, they don't really. I mean, Trump doesn't really need to prioritize the Europeans. I mean, they're not. They don't really have any agency. So
Yeah,
why would he need to prioritize relations?
it's it's a kind of a cute formulation, but I don't think I think it's irrelevant. I mean, he's not
No,
prioritizing because that would mean that the Europeans have some relative worth or value. They don't.
no, they don't. But for Trump, I think he does want, he's wanted good relations with Russia, and I think he's always had this fantasy in mind. He's going to split Russia and China, get Russia on board. I mean that he's been
And crush bricks. Yeah,
and
right.
crush bricks exactly. And then Tusk, all the decisions concerning Poland will be taken by Poles. Nothing about us without us.
Well, that's where the phrase actually comes from. It comes from a focus on Poland, and that's why it became nothing about Ukraine without Ukraine. Originally it was nothing about Poland without Poland.
Right. When it comes to peace, all the negotiations should include Ukraine. Nothing about Ukraine without
Yeah,
Ukraine.
keep whistling Dixie, okay?
That's right. And there was Tusk, who spent the first part of this week talking about how Russia is kept practicing state terrorism, attacking our railway infrastructure, hoping that this is going to be a nice way to keep the pot boiling.
Deflated that real
That's
quick.
right. Well, hey, what about this railway? I mean,
Yeah, well, George, it kind of had a bitter end because it was two Ukrainians that were
yes,
arrested.
two Ukrainians who were working
Of
for,
course,
for the Kremlin.
and they apparently had a truckload of drones or whatever.
That's right, exactly. There's a telegraph. US tells Ukraine, sign deal by Thursday or have weapons
Well,
cut off.
that's not what it says.
I don't think so either. But the telegraph is,
This is typical clickbait.
yeah. But
This is supposed to be a reputable news outlet. That's just complete
no,
bullshit.
the telegraph is not reputable. It may
No,
have
they masquerade as.
exactly 50 years ago it had a reputation. It doesn't have one now. No, any of the British papers don't have any kind of reputation. The Times, I mean, it's a rag. The U.S. has threatened to cut off weapons and intelligence to Ukraine unless it signs Donald Trump's peace plan by next Thursday.
According to whom?
Exactly. I read that, and I wonder
According to the
what's your
people, they
source for
like to.
that? Who says
Yeah,
this?
according to the people, they like to say these days. According
Exactly.
to the people.
But there's no citation. Who told you this? Officials say Kiev is under greater pressure from Washington to accept the U.S. president's terms than during any previous round of negotiations. Vladimir Zelensky said on Thursday that he would use the plan as the basis for talks with Russia, but warned that Ukraine's red lines must not be crossed in any agreement. I don't know you can impose these red lines. I mean, when you're a wholly owned dependency of others, you don't really have red lines.
Yeah, well, Zelensky already forfeited that right because he has made it clear that he doesn't want to negotiate with the
Right,
Russians. He
exactly.
wants the Americans to do it. Well, the Americans did it.
Yes, that's right. And then the Wall Street Journal, White House's Ukraine peace plan draws pushback. Ooh. And European officials push back against a U.S. proposal for ending the Ukraine war, saying that Kiev must approve any plan and that the conflict must not end with a Ukrainian capitulation. And European officials will now have to reprise a role they have played periodically since President Trump's return to the White House, using connections in Washington to try to pull the administration back from a proposal they see as too favorable to Russia. The problem there is that you can't keep playing the same game. I mean, they did it. They shot their bolt after Anchorage. I mean, I think Trump clearly doesn't want to go through that again. So there's not going to be a procession to the Oval Office. So we've got to
No,
dissuade
Trump would
Trump.
much prefer to be surveying the East Wing of the White House in his new ball room.
The new
Okay,
ballroom,
because
yeah.
he'll get more gratification out of that than talking to these European leaders again.
Right. That's right. And then U.S. officials said Trump supports the new plan, which materialized after he told aides to craft new proposals that include incentives for the two sides to reach a deal. It isn't so far clear how receptive Washington is to redrafting the proposal to address Ukrainian or European ideas, or whether the administration will try to impose the plan on Zelensky. And then Politico,
It's
Europe.
all what fluff that is. It's all rhetoric.
That's exactly
It's
that.
all rhetorical.
And then here's Politico headline: Europe to Trump. Your Ukraine peace plan is no plan at all. And U.S.
Europe,
emblem.
why does Europe have standing
It
here?
has no standing. That's the point. It has no standing. So the whole thing, Europeans saying this or saying that, if you're devoting all your energies to continuing to keep the war going, then what kind of standing do you have when it comes to
Comes to
peace
peace.
talks? Yeah, I mean that's it. You said okay, you want to continue with the war. We know this. You want your plan is to have a ceasefire, unconditional ceasefire immediately. Well, that's not going to happen. I mean
Well,
that's
look at it.
obvious.
U.S. invoice Steve Witkoff's ceasefire blue. It's not a ceasefire blueprint, but political. You're so sloppy.
Right.
Uh, is a blow to dismayed Europeans who thought Trump finally understood that you can't trust Putin. What pablum this is. Europeans, yeah, they're shocked because he wants to end this war. We don't.
We don't exactly and that's what I mean when there was Tusk who's thinking, oh great, now we've got more hysteria about Russia, mobilizing European opinion against Russia, and then this dropped. He wasn't expecting this. This came out of nowhere. This 28-point plan. But hey, why aren't we talking about those railways? I mean, and how Russia is a sponsor of state terrorism. I mean, everything's gone wrong. Um, and then it says the European they rejected Donald Trump's latest proposal for a lopsided peace deal that favors Moscow, warning that caving into Russia will only encourage Vladimir Putin to attack NATO next. That's
Blah, 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 blah.
exactly. Kaya Kallas, the European Union's top diplomat, told the U.S. president's team that their 28-point blueprint for ceasefire will
Not a
fail.
ceasefire. It's not a
Exactly.
ceasefire.
Ceasefire will fail without support from Kiev and European
Oh,
governments.
we'll see about that. We'll see about that. Okay.
And then Europeans are facing another stark realization. This is the kind of amusing. Their efforts to buy themselves a place at the negotiating table by agreeing to foot the bill for new defense aid going to Ukraine don't appear to be working out.
Oh,
So having said, okay, Mr. President, we'll cough up the money. We'll pay for all these weapon systems, just as long as you keep on board. That plan hasn't worked.
yeah, and you're still going to eat gruel, okay?
Exactly.
Because look, they show no power.
Right.
They show no sophisticated intellectual
No,
understanding of it.
no.
George and I have been saying until we've been blue in the face. We have problems with this 28 point plan, but you can work with it. It's mostly about security.
Right.
And that's what the Russians have wanted all
That's right.
along.
That's right. It's about security, which and the plan obviously goes into some details about security for everyone, and that was the point. Because the Europeans said, "Oh yes, security. That means security for Ukraine." That's all. Apparently that's the only issue that we weren't prepared to discuss security for Ukraine. Well, that's not going to fly. Security for Ukraine. That has to be security for everyone. And then you have to address, some of the issues in Ukraine. I mean, you're going to have to ask issue of the religious freedom, media freedom, respect for minorities, all things the Europeans didn't want to address. So this whole plan addresses lots and lots of things that Europeans have gone out of the way to deliberately ignore. And remember, this whole ceasefire thing that they're talking about, they weren't talking about ceasefire at all until Trump came into office, and then they embraced, oh yeah, that's it, unconditional ceasefire. Up until then, hey, we just got to keep this war going, to bring Putin to the negotiating table. That's the plan. Bring Putin to the negotiating table. How do Europeans have so little agency here, even when we're now paying the entire bill?
Yeah, well,
Second,
the joke's on you, okay?
you
It's your fault.
that's
Okay.
right. Second, blah, blah, and say Ukraine reasonable. Now, the thing is,
It's unreasonable,
it's
George.
yeah,
It's amazing that they would say it's unreasonable.
that's right. So let's just try to map out what happens now.
Well, I have a question for you first.
Okay,
Looking at those 28 programs, and I said this on my 28 points. I said this on my program. This is really, in many ways, a reasonable facsimile of a Putin plan,
right.
okay? It has Trump's name on it.
Yep,
Because the 28 points, for the most part, you can put in two different baskets. Russia wants security for itself and magnanimously wants security for all.
right,
There's one bucket.
right,
The rest of it is how does this come about without
right,
the Americans paying for it and actually profiting from?
right,
And that's why I'm not going to name names, but all you guys chiming in about this, about Anchorage, it wasn't a waste of time.
right,
Actually, it was time well spent
right. I
because
agree.
it's obvious to me. A simple example, protection, linguistic protections and religious protections. They got that from Anchorage,
Yep,
okay?
yep,
Right? And so really there's layers here, layers of what the Russians have wanted, and then other things to actually sweeten it. Talking about rights and all and rebuilding, all of the rebuilding and investments. Sure, I'm not against. Okay, G8, okay, whatever. But none of that's going to happen. And
right,
I think what you could take that bucket and I don't want to be malicious or anything, but fine if that's what you want, okay? Because it's never going to happen.
right.
But the security parts, everybody benefits from the security part. No matter how Russophobic you are, the argument for indivisibility of security is in that document.
It's in that document, and I agree with you. I think this is um, quite, it addresses the issues that Putin wanted addressed in those um, the documents that he issued on in December the 17th, 2021. So it addresses those. And again, back in December 2021, Russia had no territorial claims. So therefore, oh, oh, Russia sold out or betrayed anyone. No, because in December 2021, Russia made no territorial, absolutely no, nothing on the Donetsk and Lugansk. There was nothing in those proposals. It was entirely about security. So that just shows that this war has never been about territorial claims. So the people who are going to attack Russia, oh, he's selling people out, look, because he's going to leave Kherson, the city of Kherson, and the city of Zaporozhye in Ukrainian hands. That's not important. That was never really one of Russia's objectives. But it does address the issues of security and the issues of linguistic and minority rights. So that's a very significant. But now the question is, all right, well, they're out there now. This is a detailed plan, so it's out there. It's not like everything else where it was up in the air. We had talk. Trump has a conversation with Putin, and then they plan a meeting in Budapest, and that doesn't happen. So now it's out there. This is that we can all look at this 28-point plan. You can't really walk it back and say, oh well, forget about that. You've written this down, and everyone's can read it. So the question then is, well, what happens now? The Europeans, they're in Johannesburg. They're pretending to be interested in all this G20 stuff. They're obviously going to try and sabotage it. And the question is, can they sabotage it now? Are they in any position to sabotage it?
No, I don't see it. I don't see it. Because, as I said earlier, Trump can play hardball here. I mean, nasty hardball. And we all know he can do it.
Yeah.
Okay. He doesn't want to have a preschool meeting in his
Right.
office again.
No.
Okay. This is what I have determined. And you're
Mhm.
going to go along with it because I said so.
Right.
And they can do, oh, great. They have all the talk shows and who cares?
Right.
The important thing, I don't, it'll be political theater for us, theater, and ample material for criticism and critique,
Right.
what the Europeans do, because I have complete disdain for them, all right?
Right.
What's most important, George, is what the Russians say.
Right.
And
Right.
we don't know what that is yet.
We don't know what that is yet. As I say, these comments from Peskov are just entirely almost
Pro forma, just pro
meaningless.
forma. Yeah.
Yeah, it's pro forma exactly. He's still talking about anchorage. I mean, so therefore, that's where well, we're not really.
Well, they're not making it easy, are they?
No, they're not. But it's
They're
like
not making, no, no, no,
no.
no.
But I think that I think it's very smart for the Russians to hold back on responding. Let the Europeans do the responding because if you rush out of the gate and say, "Oh, it's completely unacceptable," then okay, well, what you're not really prepared to come to any kind of an agreement. If, however, they if they were to come out and say, now this is a great plan, we support it, then that would sabotage the whole thing because, oh look, this is a gift for Putin, and so that's what we said, it's a gift for Putin. So the Russians are kind of, yeah, well, sure, we're still talking about anchorage. I don't know about this 28-point plan. We just read about it in the papers, and so we don't, nothing has been formally presented to us. So I think it's quite smart to hold back on reactions and wait for others to
Yeah,
show their hand.
I think important. This is a huge, huge diplomatic victory for Russia. Just the plan itself, irrespective of what happens to it.
Right.
This is why? Because the core issues, which people mocked without understanding what the core issues were, I'm sure of that. And the Russians will read it. I mean, at least privately right now says, well, they heard us.
Yep.
They
That's
heard us
that's right.
because that's in there. That's why I think there are two baskets here.
Right.
One basket is you got my attention. The other one's, well, we'll see. Okay. Okay. It's hope. A lot of that's hope.
Right. Right.
Okay.
No, you're right. I mean, I think that's it. They heard us, and this is a very different plan from all the nonsense that's been coming out.
Oh, all of our friends that all of their, we can't even remember all of these newfangled ceasefires, okay, that made the headlines and banners, and all of it, George and I dismissed out of hand, every single time.
That's
And
right.
this is why this podcast today is very important because this is something different, finally.
This is very different, and you're right because if we think of the commentary that has appeared regularly on, say, the Quincy Institute, which is among the better forums, they continue to go back to Minsk. Oh, it's going to be a variant on Minsk. Minsk doesn't address the problems. I mean, this is the point. You have to address the security problem, and Minsk doesn't do that. The whole that Minsk would just be a ceasefire, and let's wait for another few years before we start the war again. That was never going to fly.
Be fair, some of the material that the Quincy Institute Responsible Statecraft is putting out is excellent on so many issues. On so many issues. I read it all of the time. Ukraine is just
Yeah, 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 yeah. Yep. So anyway, we're going to be watching, what happens in the
Oh,
next.
George, since I got you, were you surprised by this? I was.
Yeah, I was surprised. With Trump, that's the thing with Trump. He's very mercurial, and but there is, in a way, there is a method to his madness. That underneath it all, everyone would have assumed that, oh, he's with us now. He's on
Yeah,
board.
he pivoted again. He
That's
pivoted.
right. Oh yeah, he's realized that Putin's a bad guy. Oh yeah, he's now like he's imposing sanctions. Yeah, yeah, he's like Michael McFaul. Yeah, yeah, good. Finally, Trump has come around to our way of thinking. Boom. They weren't watching that. With Dmitriev came to the United States and went off to see
Well,
Witkoff in
I
Florida.
remember
Weren't
the
watching.
coverage. I remember the coverage of it, Dmitriev's visit. Nobody wants to talk to him. I remember
That's right.
reading it
Yeah,
over and
yeah,
over again.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, really
Yeah.
well-informed people. No, it could be you can't be informed if you're so prejudiced.
Yeah,
Okay,
exactly.
you
Exactly.
always see what you want to see.
Yeah.
Dmitriev he's a pretty serious guy. He worked in the United States. He's a money man. Okay, he knows English perfectly. He knows American manners, attitudes. Okay, he was a perfect interlocutor.
Yeah. 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 That's right. The fact that Jared Kushner is involved in it just also indicates that means Trump himself is, that's his son-in-law. And yeah, exactly. They're in on this. So, yeah, I think it caught me by surprise because it really almost came out of nowhere. I mean, if you think of the how this week was developing, like we were talking about, the Poland thing, and then they had another meeting, the military Schengen thing. Oh, we're going to be moving our tanks and armored personnel carriers across Europe. There will be no
Wow.
barriers to our tank movements in Europe and all this.
No barriers to our aggression.
Exactly. And then he suddenly dropped this plan. And so, yeah, it was surprising. But now we're going to see, how are they going to try and sabotage it? Because this is a
Well,
crisis
also
for them.
you're gonna have Congress now in their Epstein fever, which is taking all of the oxygen out. They're gonna go home to take a long week for Thanksgiving, okay? And Trump's plan is just in air right now, okay? All these things are intertwined, okay? But it's for Trump, he needs this desperately as a win. He is in deep, deep trouble.
Yeah.
Okay. And, George and I are ball and strikes guy. Okay. If this somehow, I think this is the beginning of a process because the Russians are going to say, "Ah, well, what about this point?" And they're going to, I guarantee you, they're going to do that.
They're
Okay.
going to do
I'm
this.
sure the guys, maybe not maybe with the exception of the Qataris, because they're really detailed people. They are, right? But the Russians are like, well, we need to talk a little bit about. I think they'll get a lot of traction
No,
out of it.
but the thing is that this is the framework for an agreement. You've now presented the
Finally,
framework, and
finally.
now there is a basis here finally to bring this to an end. And so therefore, going back, oh, ceasefire, an unconditional ceasefire. I mean, it's already nonsense. I mean, obviously the Americans have realized we need a fundamental rethink of European security. We need to present a framework for an agreement that's going to bring this to an end. Just addressing, piecemeal, that isn't going to do it.
I would bet my bottom dollar, George, as we're speaking right now. There are articles being written at Politico and the FT. The Trump proposes peace plan, but the Russians continue to bomb.
That's right.
Okay,
That's
and of course, when you look at the history of military conflict, peace negotiations can look at
Right.
the ending of the Vietnam War. Okay.
Well, that's right.
I mean, the hostility, the generals are going to say, well, that's the foreign minister's job, not my job. My job, I have a job,
right. No, that
and
you're
I'm
right.
going to continue it until I'm told not to. Okay.
Exactly. The Paris peace talks started in early 1968, concluded in 1973. 5 years of negotiations in Paris before they finally came to an agreement. There was no ceasefire, no ceasefire at all in Vietnam. So that it's never been a condition of anything. And you know, if you think of like World War One, there were a lot of negotiations. During the years of World War One, there was no ceasefire, no major ceasefire. The negotiations, trying to figure out what will. They didn't get anywhere, but there were at least attempts to see what would both sides agree upon.
You know,
Um,
and also, was it Politico? Armistice.
yeah,
See, this shows you how illiterate a lot of these people are, historically illiterate. You know, th this is not about an armistice. If I was the editor and someone, a writer sent that to me, I'd fire them. I said, did you look up the word? Do you know what the word means?
yeah, that's exactly right. That's exactly. That's why they keep talking armistice or ceasefire agreement, which is not that absolutely not what is being discussed here. Um, So yeah, I mean, this is obviously they've got the beginning of a process, but you're absolutely right. What they're now going to try and do, I mean, obviously the false flag attacks, and they know how do we play on Trump? You know, because you remember Trump has said so many times, "Oh, I have a great conversation with Putin," and then I talked to Melania and says, "Oh, Russia blew up, another kindergarten or
Well,
something."
I think
That's
it's
what they're gonna.
already.
You watch how many kindergartens and hospitals supposedly Russia's going to be blowing up in
Oh
the
yeah,
next.
I saw a news report this morning. The demolition, total destruction of a Ukrainian apartment building. Well, it looked like something hit it, but it didn't fall down.
Right,
There were a lot of broken windows. Okay, their words and their pictures do not match whatsoever. It was mentioned in the agreement, and something that I've worried about from the very beginning is the Zaporozhye nuclear power plant. That's easy pickings to
right,
create an incident.
right,
Okay, nuclear power. You know, I mean, did people go nuts? As I should. I mean, it's serious stuff.
right, right.
There's going to be, and George and I didn't address here. Maybe we'll address it over the weekend or next week. Is that the the political instability of the Kiev regime it's at
No,
number 10 right now.
right.
Okay,
It's that
I mean,
that's
what's going on in the parliament, the
right.
witch hunt going on. I mean, it's the incredible diminishing Zelensky at home.
Yep.
Okay, and he said, "Well, we'll take a look at it." He doesn't. His power base is evaporating.
Right, right. Yeah, yeah. No, that's right. That's right.
All right, everybody. Now, who else? Who else went through all the 28 points?
No, exactly. We did it. We went through it. Addressed each of the things. And so and what we agreed upon was that this is a serious agreement. This is the first time we've seen a serious attempt to bring this war to an end. And so therefore, we have to address this and say, well, maybe, you know,
Maybe.
this could be the beginning of the end. So, well,
Well, we're still sitting at the table.
right,
Okay. And that's what's most important. You got our attention.
right,
And I think you got the attention of a lot of other people here.
right.
Too bad Europeans, this is a self-fulfilling prophecy of you owned yourself. So stop whining.
You can't.
Okay.
And if you just say, "Oh,
Stop whining.
we have no other plan other than to keep the war going," well, then why should anyone listen to you?
Irreversible era was the phrase I was looking for. This is an irreversible era on your part, Europe.
Exactly.
All right. I need a drink. Uh,
Me too.
it's my Friday.
Yes.
Okay. All right, everybody. This is the Goggle with Peter and George. We're on local, so please go to thegoggle.locals.com. The tip jar. Now that you mention it, the tip jar. I just said we went through every single point.
Yeah.
George did the forensic study of the responses to date here. the tip jar is a pressing issue as well. I would say it's the 29th point.
That's right. Exactly. That's right. Yeah. And body and app. Yeah, we did all of that. We went through it, and it was an exhausting process. We need to be rewarded. We need to be compensated. We need to be
And they
remunerated.
have to listen to my voice for an hour
Yeah,
and a half.
exactly. Exactly. We've been slaving over a hot laptop all day. We need compensation. So if you have anything at all lying around, gold bullion, $100 bills, anything, crypto, anything at all, into that tip jar. Try to keep the dogs happy for a while. So we're very grateful for all of your help, friendship, and support. The more you're able to donate, the more of these videos we can make, the more we can improve on the technology, and above all, we're going to quieten the dogs down for just a little bit. That's always a small mercy. So remember, if you like the gaggle, please like, share, and subscribe. See you soon. Bye bye.